Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and today we're going to be doing a comparison between these three shoes. So you would think that, these two are a little bit more similar, so this would be like, this would be the 12 and then the 11 and this is like 10 or something like that. But it actually goes 10 and then 11 and then the 12, right? And if you look at the WoW 9, the WoW 9 was also like a pretty bulky, stiffer feeling shoe. So maybe Dwayne Wade just likes to switch it up every single year. One year he wants to have a really thin, flexible kind of feeling shoe, very lightweight. And then next year he wants something a little bit bulkier, a little bit stiffer, a little bit heavier, a little bit more supportive. So, in terms of like comparison, it's a little bit weird to compare, in my personal opinion, the WoW 11 to the 12 because they're a really different feeling shoe. Because the WoW 11 is a little bit heavier, it's a little bit stiffer, it's also a little bit bulkier feeling as well, especially with the EVA kind of like a cage, for the entire shoe. And the WoW 12 and WoW 10 are a little bit more similar, you know what I mean? I know a lot of people, I feel like in terms of Chinese shoes at the gym, I've seen the WoW 10 the most, you know what I mean? The WoW 10 I feel like is pretty dang popular. Of course, it's a very, very nice performing hoop shoe. So that's why I want to do a little bit more of a comparison between these two shoes, but I'll also throw in the WoW 11 there as well, right? So if you guys do want to cop any of these shoes, I try to leave in the affiliate link in the description box, and it does help me out if you buy through the affiliate link in the description box. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the support. But let's get it started right off with the tracciones, right? So the WoW 10 had a very fine herringbone traction pattern, right? And then here in the WoW 11, we had a very nice storytelling traction pattern with there you can see Dwayne Wade's face. And then with the WoW 12, we have they're going back to the basics a little bit. You can see the WoW the Wave logo here in the 4-foot width mix of storytelling traction as well as a herringbone traction pattern, right? So in terms of the actual material that they're using for the outsole, here in the WoW 12 and 11, they're using GCU, and GCU is a type of plastic, you know what I mean? So you have really good durability, you have really good slip resistance, amazing grip, and it's supposed to perform better on like a dustier surface, right? And then the WoW 10, they're just using regular rubber. It's a rubber compound, so in terms of a dust performance, the WoW 10 definitely picked up more dust for me than the WoW 11, right? And the WoW 12, it seems like it's picking up pretty minimal dust right now, just from my first impressions. So it seems like it'll have better dust performance, because I was testing both of these shoes out as well, right? I was wearing both of these shoes around my apartment, and then of course right when I put it on, it was clean, and then it had really good stops for both of them, right? I would say the WoW 12 stopped a little bit harder though, but then I was walking around, picked up a little bit of dust, and then the WoW 10 started to slide around a little bit more due to like dog hair and stuff, and then the WoW 12 was still having really good bites, you know what I mean? And of course I did the same thing here in the WoW 11 and 12, and they both performed very, very nicely, you know what I mean? So and also in terms of durability, I mean, I don't know, I feel like the WoW 11 is gonna be a little bit worse because the grooves are actually really thin, you know what I mean? So I don't know why they made it so thin here in the WoW 11, but then the WoW 12, it's still a kind of thin groove, but then the material seems pretty stiff, or stiffer than the WoW 11, so it seems like this will be a little bit more durable. And then in the WoW 10, of course, probably not recommended because first of all, it's rubber, and also it's really thin for the groove, so not the best option for outdoor courts, right? So and also in terms of squeak, they're all pretty dang squeaky, you know what I mean? I would say if I were to nitpick, the WoW 10 is the least squeaky because it's still squeaky though, don't get me wrong, but it's just not as loud as GCU. I don't know what they did with the compounds in the GCU for the WoW 11 and 12, but these are really squeaky, right? So there's that. And now moving on to the heel to toe transitions, so that's definitely something that is a little bit different in all the shoes as well. So the WoW 12 is definitely the softest feeling. It definitely feels a little bit more nimble, so it feels a little bit more closer to like a very flexible guard shoe like the Sabrina 3 and Tatum 4. However, the Sabrina 3 and Tatum 4 are way softer than the WoW 12, right? But I'm just saying this is a little bit more on the flexible side of things, right? So it is able to flex, right? It is able to flex, but I can't really do it super easily even with one finger, but it is able to flex, right? And it still has a nice kind of like springy feel to it. But then comparing it to the WoW 10, I feel like maybe the carbon fiber is just a little bit stiffer, or maybe a little bit longer, or goes a little bit more into the forefoot. I don't know, but it's way stiffer. You know what I mean? And it has a really explosive feel, very, very springy feel. And same thing here in the WoW 11. It's using a full-length carbon fiber plate. They are saying that the carbon fiber plate is sandwiched in between the actual boom midsole, whereas the WoW 10 is bottom loaded, right? But yeah, either way, it's a lot stiffer here in the WoW 11 as well. You know, but it still has a nice kind of like springy, explosive feel. So, and also torsion support, WoW 11 and WoW 10 is a little bit stiffer than the 12. The 12 is a little bit softer, you know what I mean? So that's just a little bit of a difference that I felt, right? And now moving on to the cushioning setup. The cushioning setup, I would say, is pretty similar in feel, but as far as like the core feel goes, the WoW 12 is definitely the best. So in terms of underfoot cushion, underfoot feel, and step and comfort, they all feel really nice. You know what I mean? Right when you put on the shoe, they're all really soft, very, very comfortable. You can feel the actual foam, like the cushion right underneath your foot compressing, you know what I mean? Because all these shoes are using a soft strobo board, right? So the WoW 10, they're using a soft mesh strobo board. The WoW 11, they're using a soft mesh strobo board. And then the WoW 12, they're using, it's like a softer strobo board with a lot of holes in it. It's not like a mesh material, but it's still really soft. It's not like a super stiff glued down strobo board, right? So they all have a very soft underfoot feel, which is very similar, right? In terms of like the actual midsole compressing, I would say the WoW 12 and the WoW 10 is pretty similar because they're both using a soft kind of cage, right? Both of these are pretty dang soft, so they do have a little bit more compression here in the heel, whereas the WoW 11 is there's pretty much nothing because you have all this cage and you also do have that kind of like EVA kind of midsole, you know what I mean? So I like these two a little bit more for that heel compression, you know? But again, I like the WoW 12, in my personal opinion, the best right now because it has the best core feel. And I would say the WoW 10 is a little bit higher up off the ground, and then the WoW 11 is even a little bit higher up off the ground than the WoW 10, just a tiny bit, right? And also, right now, it feels a little bit bouncier, you know what I mean? The rebound back feels a little bit faster to me, you know what I mean? So, yeah, the WoW 12 also is using Super Boom. This is Super Boom. The WoW 11 and the WoW 10 is using just regular boom, you know what I mean? So maybe it's the Super Boom, I don't know, but it feels a little bit bouncier. It has better core feel, but we'll have to see on impact protection, right? I haven't really actually played in these, so compared to the 10 and 11, we'll have to see on like when I'm jumping around and actually really playing hard. Hopefully the WoW 12 has good impact protection. I'm sure it will, but you know, Super Boom is a very soft foam and it is lower to the ground, so you know, it's a thinner midsole, so I am a little bit worried about the impact protection, but I feel like it'll still probably be adequate, right? So overall right now, I think the WoW 12 has the best cushioning setup. So there's that. Moving on to the upper. So in terms of upper, they all feel pretty different as well. I mean, the WoW 11 also did have different materials for the upper, but it definitely has the stiffest, most rigid feel. You know what I mean? But also it has the most supportive feel too. You know what I mean? But once you break it in, it does get pretty soft and conforms to your foot pretty well. It doesn't pinch ever at all. It's never uncomfortable for me, but it just has a little bit more stiffer and rigid feel, right? For the WoW 10, of course, we did have this kind of like really thin, like textile mesh material, really good for airflow too, but not the best for durability. That's something I noticed some people had a problem with, you know what I mean? But then the WoW 12, I feel like you get the best of both worlds, you know? Besides the ventilation, the only thing I feel like that's a like downside to this material, and they're using a TPEE material, is that the ventilation is not going to be the best, you know what I mean? Because there's really no airflow, you know? But it's just as thin, right? It's really thin and soft material, but I don't think it's gonna be bad for durability compared to like a mesh, like a textile mesh material, like here in the WoW 10. You know what I mean? It also feels really good for support too, but of course not as supportive as the WoW 11. So I feel like it's a pretty good medium. Like it tries to upgrade upon, you know, the WoW 11 and WoW 10 material a little bit, but of course it all depends on what you like and how a shoe feels on your foot, especially here in the toe box. You know what I mean? So yeah, if you like a softer feel, obviously these two are going to be better. It's softer, more thin feel. But then for the WoW 11, if you want the more rigid supportive feel, this is going to be better, right? In terms of how the shoe feels or the material feels here in the midfoot, WoW 10 and WoW 12 have a softer feel, of course, and then the WoW 11 is a little bit more rigid, especially with this midsole coming up here in the midfoot area. You know, makes it a little bit more rigid. For the tongue, the WoW 11 does have some like ribbed, kind of like padding, you know what I mean? Ribbed for her pleasure, you know what I mean? But here in the WoW 10 and the WoW 11, they're both around the same pretty much. I would say if I were to nitpick, the WoW 10 is a little bit more well padded, but It's very, very similar. They're pretty minimal. They're all half booty construction tons, giving you a better overall 1-to-1 fit. But here in the WoW 12, you have a really nice kind of like stretchy material. It stretches over your foot. It feels extremely nice. You know what I mean? So that definitely feels, it actually kind of upgrades the fit for me personally. You know what I mean? And then here in the ankle area, yeah, I mean the WoW 11 did have Achilles pads here in the back of the shoe, which felt very, very nice, especially for the lockdown. The WoW 10 pretty normal, you know what I mean, but it does have a little bit more padding, it seems like, especially where your Achilles is compared to the WoW 12. You know, the WoW 12 doesn't have as much padding, but the lighting material is a lot more premium, it feels like, you know. So yeah, there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit, so I want the exact same size in all of these shoes right over here, and the WoW 11 definitely feels like it's the roomiest and also runs a little bit longer than the WoW 10 and WoW 12, you know what I mean. And also it does feel a little bit bulkier as well, because you do have this kind of like, I don't know why they added this, you know what I mean? But here for the WoW 10 and 12, they're a very similar fit. However, I would say the WoW 10 is a little bit looser, you know? In terms of width, it's a little bit wider as well. And also, here in the toe box, it's a little bit more forgiving, I would say, you know, because of this mesh material. They're both really snug here in the toe box, you know what I mean? But I would say I can curl my toes up a little bit more. It feels a little bit more forgiving here in the WoW 10. So yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there. But yeah, if you want a nice snug fit, then go true to size. Or if you know what size you are here in the WoW 10, you can go the exact same size here in the WoW 12, right? And in terms of support in lockdown, I mean, support in lockdown were really nice for me. But if I were to nitpick or like say the differences in how it feels on foot right now, I would say the WoW 10 and 12 are very, very similar in how it feels. You know what I mean? But you know, for lateral containment, you do have this plastic here in the forefoot, right? The WoW 12, not as much, but it feels like it'll be supportive enough. It comes up a little bit still with this kind of like GCU material. So yeah, hopefully the WoW 12 is fine, but the WoW 10, I mean, you do have that plastic, right? And also in terms of like which shoe is wider, I mean, I guess the WoW 12 is a little bit wider. You have a crazy outrip, you know what I mean? But compared to the WoW 11, the WoW 11 also was freaking crazy. Look at that. You see the WoW 11? You see how crazy that is? You know what I mean? So yeah, that's the thing about the WoW 11. Yeah, with all this, you know, also at the tip of the toe, and also with all this here in the heel, it just feels a little bit bulkier, you know, or way bulkier, you know what I mean? And also heavier because it is heavier, and also a little bit stiffer in terms of the upper and the bottom of the shoe, of course. So yeah, it just has a way bulkier, stiffer, rigid, supportive feel compared to the WoW 10 and the WoW 12. But I would say even the WoW 12 is a little bit more nimble, softer feeling than the WoW 10 because of the bottom of the shoe, you know? So there is a support in lockdown there. Moving on to the weight of the shoe, I mean, yeah, the WoW 12 is definitely going to be the lightest. This shoe is freaking light. It comes in at 10.9, 11 ounces, right? Let's check the WoW 10. This shoe is like 11.85 ounces. And then the WoW 11 is 12 ounces, right? So yeah, the WoW 12 is definitely, they decrease the weight like crazy. The WoW 10 and WoW 11 are a little bit more similar in weight, you know? So that's something that I definitely noticed a little bit more. It's just weird because this is the lightest, most minimal feeling and most nimble feeling. The WoW 10 feels pretty similar, just a little bit heavier, but also a little bit stiffer underfoot and a little bit higher up off the ground. And then the WoW 11 has the most cushion, but also is stiffer, or the stiffest feeling underfoot, with the upper as well, like the stiffest feeling for the upper too. So yeah, very, very different feeling, you know? And now moving on to the aesthetics, I definitely feel like the WoW 12 looks the best, and then I would say the WoW 10, and then I would say the WoW 11, you know what I mean? But in terms of like off-court use though, I think the WoW 11 can be worn off-court a little bit better, in my personal opinion. I don't know, because you know, the WoW 10 and the WoW 12 look more like gym shoes or hoop shoes to me a little bit more, you know? But either way, in terms of the actual design, I like this the best, and then the 10, and then the 11. So tell us what you guys think looks the best down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, yeah, I really love the evolution of his shoes, you know what I mean? But the WoW 12 definitely feels like an upgraded version of the WoW 10 to me, you know? It has GCU, hopefully it has better dust performance, but yeah, the WoW 10 did pick up a little bit of dust for me. Again, the cushioning setup is very, very similar, but the WoW 12 right now feels a little bit bouncier and better for core feel, which of course is an upgrade in my personal opinion. The upper also, it feels very similar too, but it seems like the TPEE material here in the WoW 12 is going to be more durable, but the overall feeling of the upper is very similar in both of these shoes. You know what I mean? So yeah, a lot of people love the WoW 10. I love the WoW 10. I love the WoW 10 low. And since the WoW 12 is feeling like an upgraded version, I'm very, very excited to try these out. And I'm very, very happy with what they did here in the WoW 12. So anyways, that about concludes my comparison between, I guess, like all three of these shoes. Again, if you guys do want to cop any of these shoes, I try to leave in the affiliate link in the description box. And also, if you guys use the code TheSoulDrop10, you can get an extra $10 off. But that about concludes this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.